So this comes from The Independent. But this is one of the things that I've been talking about for quite a while. Property is big money, and a lot of people make a lot of money out of owning property, especially from the wealth that they accumulate from it, and it's not even taxed. And this is one of the things that we really need to have a look at, because we need to pay for our services, we need to pay for our NHS. This is one way we can do it. And think about this: if you did this tax, you could build more social houses. You could allocate that wealth to building social houses. The housing crisis would be solved using this tax. But anyway, on to the actual story then. So in Britain today, housing tenure is as important as a social division as income or class. Ask anyone under the age of 35 what they would like to see happen to house prices, and you'll likely get a very different response to that of a 50-year-old homeowner who benefited from the astronomical price rises of the 90s and early noughties. When Margaret Thatcher set about deregulating the private rented sector in 1988, doing away with rent controls and making it easier than ever for landlords to evict their tenants in an attempt to encourage more to enter the market and fill the gaps in provision being left by a social housing sell-off under the right to buy. It was all done in the name of liberating the house market and giving people more choice. While she succeeded in creating a booming buy-to-let sector, this delivered anything but choice. Young people and those on low incomes can't afford to buy homes. They rely on the whims of private landlords who can evict them at any time, and many are forced to pay extortionate rents which have outpaced wages and tens of thousands are left languishing in temporary accommodation because there isn't enough social housing, sometimes for years. With every new arrival in number 10, the silver bullets start flying around as they tell us how committed they are to solving the housing crisis. The problem, though, is that they are usually delivering the same tired old message. We need to build more. It's unimaginative. It builds a complete lack of understanding to the problems that we face. In recent years, the ease with which some could go from renting to living in a van because they can no longer afford to pay a landlord, or fell on hard times after an eviction and ended up sleeping in a shopping container, while anyone who has bought property can confidently watch its value rise faster than wages, it shows the sheer scale of our society's failure to house people appropriately. It is this that needs addressing. Wealth inequality. It has changed the fabric of our society perhaps even further, with housing inequality influencing the Brexit vote, and yet it is never addressed. Landowners have been able to sit back, relax, and enjoy windfall gains at a faster rate than wages have grown, while those in work scrape by to afford rents and get themselves into ever more debt in an attempt to get on the housing ladder. Earlier this week, the Institute for Public Policy Research called for the government to tax wealth in the same way it taxes income from work. As things stand, the richest people are more likely to gain income from wealth they can actually end up paying less than those in work. Data shows that half of England is owned by less than 1% of the population. So playing the property market really does pay. But by any other name, this is feudalism. But what if there was another solution? Not a silver bullet, but something that could actually redress this inequality. Implementing land value taxes. The notion that we need to implement a land value tax in Britain is nothing new. It was advocated by American economist Henry George in the late 1800s as a way of reducing economic rents. In the UK, the 8th century economist Adam Smith was a fan too, advocating for ground rents in the wealth of nations. Land values became a key idea for the Liberal Party at the start of the 20th century, with Dade Lloyd George arguing that we need to free the land from this very hour from its shackled with chains of feudalism. Boris Johnson's hero, Winston Churchill, was also keen on the idea to start at the start of his career. As housing inequality grows, reinforcing Britain's wealth gap, and the case for a land value tax has never been stronger. As Josh Ryland Collins, Toby Lord, and the Laurie Morfelku argue in Rethinking the Economics of Land and Housing, the advantages would include reducing the distortions created by investment decisions in the violent housing market, lowering property prices, making speculation less attractive, and making landowners think seriously about how much property they want to hold because of associated costs. Of course, the property transactions are currently taxed via stamp duty, which has had some success when it comes to calming down the buy-to-let market. But, as things stand, we do not tax the wealth that land accrues over time. We could go even further. We could also consider tax breaks for renters who proportionally spend more of their income on housing than those with mortgages. As the population of renters grows, so too does the number of people spending increased amounts on housing and getting nothing in return. Of course, none of this would be politically easy to achieve. It wouldn't make everyone happy, but no solution to the housing crisis will. And that's the situation we are in. We are in a housing crisis. This is something that has been going on for quite a considerable time now, and yet no one seems to want to be able to tackle or really put things in place. Like, I agree with this. A land wealth tax, I think, would be a really good idea, because then you could then use that. You could then even give it to the councils to go, okay, go build social housing. I also think we definitely need to bring back rent controls. As it said in the article, more and more people are, renting where they live. That's a fact of life. But you look at the continent, where the average time that someone owns and even rents a property can be about 10 to 15 years, whereas in the UK it's only 4. Because most of the time the landlord kicks them out. So imagine that. And, it's absolutely insane. But this is something that we need to solve. This is nothing, again, to do with Brexit, but it's a crisis that we need to solve. And we need to really think radical about how we are going to do it. And I think the idea that was presented here is definitely one solution to this problem. But as I said, it's not going to make everyone happy, especially the landowners. But as far as I'm concerned, screw them. So tax them.